Okay, everybody, welcome to this edition of Steam MacGyver. We build canvas panels for painting on if you're an artist kind of guy. Get all your materials. This is birch plywood, some canvas, and of course our neutral pH adhesive. Let's do it. All right, so we got our supplies. We have a bolt of linen. I'm sorry, this is canvas. This is just straight up canvas. Usually I like using the Classen's linen, but that's like $1.5 million, whereas this stuff was a little more affordable. It's unprimed, and so as far as I can tell, there's no real right side to it, but I think there is. Whatever. So what we're going to do is this is also a birch plywood. It's the 1/8 inch or 2.7 millimeter birch plywood, and we're using the back side to adhere the canvas to, because we want the other side to look good. So when somebody buys your paint, you're like, oh my god, look how awesome your canvas panels are, holy smokes. Then you're like, all right, yeah, that's what you're paying the top dollar for. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this off. Probably should use a razor. Okay, so this we're just going to set aside. We'll use it for some other panels later. Here's the conundrum. One is to go across like this. The other is to go across like this. Now, on one side you're going to have overhang. On the other way, you got to create a separate size panel. Right? You got that. And I was laying awake last night trying to figure out how I was going to do this. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it this way. It's because the overhang and the floppy, this and that, it's just, it's frustrating. So, what we're using is our neutral pH adhesive. Problem is, you got to do this stuff like, if you can't do it like all at once and then put it on everything, it won't work. I mean, not unless you got like some serious production staff going on. I'd love to know how some of those panel people do it, like Source Tech or Raymar. I'd love to know. But instead, we got to kind of figure it out and go with the flow. So with the neutral pH adhesive, this is like Miracle Muck. It's neutral pH adhesive. It's, every once in a while I read directions. But it's used for paper, board, framing, college, crafts, and book binding. PVA adhesive, it dries clear, remains flexible, unlike me. Buffered for added protection, whatever that means. Shake well and apply at room temperature. We live in Southern California, so it's always a nice room temperature. Do not store in direct sunlight, haven't, and avoid freezing. Has not froze here in a long time, since the last ice age. Shake well before use. There we go. Shake well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically put it out in like a 1 foot section. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to do like a 1 foot section, and I'm using this as kind of a guide over here. So let me know where it's going to go. And then I'm using the burnisher to kind of spread it all over the place, okay? Get a nice, even glue up. Let's see how this goes. Using a separate burnisher. I really can't stress getting the edges enough, by the way. Pretend like you saw this in the initial setup. Hope I got enough of this stuff to get through the whole panel. Okay, so what we're going to do here is let this dry. Give it a day or so to dry up, all that good stuff, and then we're going to run it through the old bandsaw. No, the table saw. I know your saws when you're a pro level carpenter like me. And then we'll cut it down to the panels. Now it's interesting. So I'm going to the WAAAAAAY Plein Air Festival. Okay, so that's where I need panels, and so is what I need to do. Oh wait, before we cut this down, we're gonna paint it, and I'll show you what I use for my paint to paint it over. It's not gesso. It's something else. Stay tuned for that little trickery. So anyways, what we're going to do is paint it and then we'll cut it down. Now, since I'm taking this to an actual plein air show, I need to cut these to specific size to the frames that I'm taking with me. That's a real key thing, you guys, if you're not used to doing plein air events. You bring the panels or your whatever painting on to match your framing. Very key there. Okay, so let's let this dry. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Now, I've got 3 coats down on the canvas panel, so that took a day or so. Okay, for some reason it didn't get recorded, but I use a Behr I get at Home Depot. It's an interior exterior, one of like the highest grade paints that they sell, and it's the semi-gloss, and I get it tinted like a light shade of gray. So when I put it down, it's not white, it's got just a real small shade of gray. Anyway, I use that stuff and I painted the whole panel, the canvas panel with that, and that's what I use as kind of like the primer. Anyway, it's all nice and dry, but I also want to show you this panel here. So this panel is just using the same utility plywood, and it has this coating on here. Hopefully I can get a good shot of it. But it's a really slick surface, more for like portrait stuff, if you will. But it has a great surface for painting on. It takes oil paint really well. I'm sure acrylics too. I'm not sure about gouache. But use paper for gouache. Come on. So anyway, but it makes it so that you can pump out a bazillion of these really cheap. I mean, for the sheet, you cut them all down. This is what, 8x10. And it just makes it for really fun utility stuff. So now with the panel that I've got here, it's we have to start cutting it down. Now, most of my frames, are standard frames, so they're 9x12, 11x14, 12x16. So putting that puzzle together and cutting it out, that's probably the hardest part here, because we have to use something called math. Now, I do have a T-square. Who doesn't have a T-square? Everyone should have a T-square. And I also happen to have something called a track saw. Okay, so a track saw it has a track, and then the saw goes along the track. And that makes it so I can cut a big panel down. I also have a table saw and a couple other fun saws. But don't worry, at your big box store, you can have them cut it down. And then they will say how many cuts they do, and they write on a little piece of paper to take it up to the register so you can pay for it. And so what you do is down like aisle 37 or something, you just crumple that paper up and throw it away. But the big box store, wherever we go to, they'll cut down your big 4x8 sheet, no problem. All right, now on to the cutting here. Oh, math. We got to do math first and figure out how we're gonna size this panel down. And using Monsieur T-square, we verify, after you cut them, of course, that everything is exactly the dimensions that they were supposed to be. If you find that they are not the dimensions that they're supposed to be, then who cares? It's art. All right, so now that we've cut the panels down, let's see what we got. We ended up with, so we did 9 by 12s and 12 by 16s. That's what I've got most of the frames for. I got like 111 by 14, but nah, screw that. Keep it simple. You know, when you do these plein air shows, you really keep it simple. Don't go nuts on it, you know. It's not like studio perfect stuff or anything. Anyway, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 9 by 12s. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we got 12, the 12 by 16s. Again, not bad. Okay, everyone, here's the deal. So you just saw me primer everything with a Behr paint semi-gloss, and I did paintings on it, the latest show I was in, and I mean, it works great. It's economical, easy, can't go wrong. But I also have something from this. This is the Gamblin gesso, and what it is it's it comes in packets. So you have a packet of white powdery stuff. You know, don't get pulled over with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the directions and see if we can do this, because I still have some unprimed canvas ready to go. Now with this gesso, it says do it on something that is like stiff surface, so like a board or something like that. Don't use it on like a stretch canvas, apparently, because it's brittle and everything will just crack and flake off. Apparently, I don't know. So it says Robert Gamblin recommend. Do you think they call him Bob? You're like, hey Bob, what's up? You know, anyway. So he recommends 4 coats. You can sand in between, and you know, produce something smoother, coarser, depending on how much you want to sand it, the whole 9 yards. And it says that each package can coat 9 square feet with 4 coats, and he recommends 4 coats. And so my panel is 5.3 square feet, so we're going to get like 4 point something coats out of it. So we should be doing pretty good. Okay, so it says pour 6 fluid ounces of distilled water into a double boiler. I'm not really sure I have a double boiler, but you know, I've got one of these and a hot plate I use for some other stupid stuff I do. Let's see, mix 1 application of dry powder thoroughly with water, let it sit for 24 hours, and then you bring it back up to heat to, but not boiling, and it becomes, the glue crystals completely dissolved. Do not overheat or boil the mixture, stir thoroughly. This kind of reminds me of like if you're in potions class at Hogwarts. I don't know. All right, so step 1 is to mix 1 package with 6 ounces of water, distilled, and then mix thoroughly and let sit. So let's do that. Okay, 6 ounces, 1 package of this stuff. I'm gonna put this into here. It also says something about the mixture of water, the ratio of water. Okay, so we have this little hot plate here. Solution might be a little thick for a little magic stir. So you can tell by your temperature probe what we're going to get up to. So we'll come back and check as this thing heats up. Okay, everyone, so here we go. I've got this, it's been sitting for a while, not quite 24 hours, let's say 18 hours, but I'm not really sure it really needs to sit that long. Anyway, so we're just, but you have to heat it up, because once it cools, then it solidifies, and then you know, you got to heat it up again. So beats me why they say 24 hours in a hot boiler. This stuff is pretty mixed up. I'd say after like if you were to do it for like a couple hours, 6 hours, I mean, they say minimum 11, but I'm not buying it. Anyway, so this is a nice liquidy liquid. Smells kind of interesting. Now, as what I'm doing is I'm going to use this Purdy brush. This is the nylon polyester medium stiff. It's a brand new brush, nice good one. I'm not going to use the chip brushes because those these tend to shed a lot. So anyway, so let's give this a go. Let's see what we get. Now it says 4 coats, and the size this is, it should take 4 coats pretty easy. We'll see. And then sanding in between. Let's give it a shot. Goes on nicely though, I'll tell you that much. Now I'm putting this on canvas, and the thing is, I'm pretty sure they may have suggested like using a stiff board and just going like right on some type of board. And that board, though it doesn't specifically say, just from my previous knowledge of screwing around with everything in life, is what you'd want to use is masonite board. And you get like 1/8-inch thick masonite board, not MDF. MDF is too porous for that. And the other option would be like a plywood or something like that, like what this is. And again, I feel that would be way too porous. You'd want to use something called masonite. I know a lot of illustrators use that kind of stuff, and they, prime, gesso, this and that, whatever they do with it. But that's the kind of board you'd want to go and find, is masonite. Unfortunately, I do not have any masonite here, or else I'd show you. Got to be honest with you, if I really had the tool set up, is what I would do is use a sprayer. I would definitely use a sprayer, but I do not have the setup for that. Either an air sprayer or an airless sprayer. A, I do not have an airless sprayer. B, my one that uses a compressor, my compressor, you get like about 2 seconds and then it runs out of air. It's like not good enough. Okay, so here's what we're going to do now. We're going to let this set up, but meanwhile, you gotta keep this warm or else it will solidify. So, just keep stirring, keep it warm, so it doesn't solidify. And that includes the brush too. I think you'll be okay with that. Let's see what happens. All right, so basically I've got this little temperature probe here, and we're sitting at 125. And just what I'm going to do is I'm also going to use this panel. This is a panel I had from before. It has, I forgot what's on here. But then I have this panel, which has the same paint as I used on the other one. So let's just do a little test here, just for fun. And it's interesting because you can see how well it's soaking it up in there, though. Probably not on camera, but visually you can tell it just really soaks it in there nicely. That's one thing I found about like some other gessos I'd use, like the premix stuff, is it was so thick you had to kind of water it down a little, whereas this is nice and thin and it's going in nicely. The texture's really soaking it up and what have you. Whereas the other stuff, you could easily tell that it just really wasn't soaking in and taking up the fiber, whereas this stuff is. The other thing is, it said to give it a light sanding between coats. I'm not really seeing that, especially not on the canvas. On the panel, I could see where you'd want to, just to smooth it out a little. Okay, I'm going to let this set up a little bit, and we'll put on, honestly, God, it's probably just our third and last coat, to be honest with you. It doesn't look like there's a lot left. All right, let that set. Put this aside, let this set up a little. Kind of see how it's even, it's pretty liquidy. But once it sets up, that glue, the rabbit skin glue, I'm guessing is what it is, will give it a nice feel. All right. Okay, so this is more or less dry. There's a little bit of a high spot. I'm going to go ahead and put the last coat on this because yeah, I want good adhesion and I don't want this stuff to set up anymore. Keeping it warm like this. So anyway, let's put some on. And this is coat number 3 if you're playing the home game, because I can tell it's starting to set up a bit more. It's not as liquidy. Now granted, it's also because, you know, keeping it warm is kind of burning off some of the liquid. I think it is burning off just too much. I'm gonna add just a splash. It's a little bit better. Ah, there we're getting a nice, good, thick, even coat on here. I like you. I like you like this. You know, there really isn't enough to do like a 4th coat. I'm just making this one super, super thick vinyl. And I can really feel it starting to set up. You know, that the rabbit skin glue binder thing is, I can really feel it, you know. Okay, nice and light brush passes, really light. Let's let this set up and see what we do. All right, everybody, so here we go. We have the panel that was done on some board, and this is a 220 grit paper, and this little sanding block. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sand this a little bit here, and then we'll see how that does, and then I'm gonna do just a real light sanding on this. It has a lot of tooth to it, so we're not gonna do the whole thing. Let's just do a little bit and see what we get. I gotta be honest with you, this feels pretty good. This feels really good. Let's do a painting on this one. So we have this one, which is the gesso. We have this one, which is the paint. And then this is gesso on the canvas. So I'm just gonna do a little section here, use this side. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, man, this is pretty nice. This is feeling real nice. This is like a lot of tooth, and you can tell it has it just needs a little bit of sanding, but this feels amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and sand the rest of this out, trim it up here with the razor to get a nice clean edge and take off the trim here, send it through the table saw, and then we're gonna have ourselves some panels, and then we gotta do some painting. Yeah, I gotta be honest with you, this is feeling real nice. Okay, let's turn it up, send it to the old table saw. Now, if you don't have a table saw, you know, you can take it to like your big box store or whatever, and they don't really do like precision cuts or anything, so I'm not really sure what to do to help you out on that. But you can pick table saws up like real cheap. Like mine's a DeWalt, and it's one of the higher end saws for this, but you can get like some really fairly cheap table saws, you know, for probably the cost of like 2 or 3 panels that you buy. So, pro tip, use a sharp blade for this. Okay, so here's a little something that happens. These 3 are 12 by 16 because I measured it precisely to the 12 by 16 line. However, the last one, because of the width of the saw blade, it takes off just that much. Now, usually you kind of split the values a little, but I didn't because I don't know why. But this one also has some other little inconsistencies like here. So I might cut this one down. I might use this one for experimentation or something. We'll see. But generally that's what happens. I don't know how the other big box people do it, because you want it to be precisely 12 by 16. I don't know. But, you know, make them smaller panels or this, that, or a, you know, landscapey panel or this and that, you know, just cut it down, make use of it. Okay, everyone, so now that we've made our panels, let's see how they turned out. First of all, we have our test subject. So this one was done on ampersand. Now, ampersand that's like the gold standard for me. I love these panels, the gesso primed ampersand panels. They're awesome. I love it. So this is how this painting turned out. It works really well on there, and I'm using oils. And so, you know, it gives you like a, you know, nice smooth texture, just enough tooth to it to, you know, to work your paint in, and it doesn't dry out the oils. So, you know, I mean, it lets the oils dry naturally instead of like sucking out the oils and you go back in to rework it. It's all gummy and stuff. So anyway, ampersand was like our baseline. Okay. So then here is the panel that was using the Gamblin gesso, the powder rabbit skin glue one. And so this, and then I sanded it with a 220 grit, you know, using all the coats, I think 3 coats, 4 coats, something like that, sanding lightly, 220 grit on canvas. And then the canvas is mounted on birch panel. And this was really good, except for one problem, is it did kind of tend to make the oils a little bit gummy. So when I went back in to rework some areas, it just kind of like had like a gummier feel to the paints. So I'm not sure about that. And then my final one is this one right here. This was done, I just finished it today, so, you know. And this is done using the gesso, the Gamblin gesso rabbit skin powder stuff, but it's on a board, it's on a birch ply, and it's but without the canvas underneath it. And I did, you know, what, 3 coats, you know, and then a nice 220 sanding on it. And quite honestly, this was really awesome. It matched the ampersand like really close. I mean, especially factoring the cost, I mean, that's really a deal. But this I like the most. If I'm just going to make a bunch of panels, I can just really quickly iterate smaller drawing, smaller painting sketches, go out plein air painting where I'm just like, you know, going, you know, if it works, they're great. If it works or not, great. But I'm going to really, you know, have fun painting and just enjoy painting because, you know, we're artists, you enjoy painting. So anyway, so I'm going to make up some more of these panels, and because I have one more package of the rabbit skin glue gesso marble whatever stuff. So I'm going to make up another panel, but I'm going to use masonite board instead of the birch, because the birch is porous, whereas the masonite is non-porous. So I'm going to try that next. Make a video of it, and we'll see where we go. All right, everybody, keep painting.